your opportunity is now, after the roundtable discussion, to flag up any issues. Again, if you just take, for example, question 3.4, what we are urging you to do is focus on the text of the recommendation there highlighted in yellow. The explanatory narrative is not the binding recommendation, it's just accompanying narrative, and we can rectify that at drafting of the report stage. So unless there's something glaringly wrong with it that you want to flag at this point, we'd say that the priority should be focusing on this, this section where you agree, disagree or don't know.
Okay, so again, our encouragement is keep focused on the big recommendation. Subtext can be changed later in reports, etc. So we'll leave you for 15 minutes or so, and we'll take stock in 15 minutes, please. Okay, members, can I get your attention, please, again, in the back of the room, if we could just get your seats, please. Everybody, sorry, facilitators, can I just ask every table just for attention, please? We're now in a position to declare the results of, sorry folks, can I ask everybody, please, we're in a position now to declare the vote of the second ballot, and I'm going to ask Kieran again to come up and present the results of the ballot and the process we got through to get the results. Thanks, Kieran.
Yeah. Okay, this is the result of the ballot we took for the 4 different groups, and we're going to start with the question for cannabis, the vote. Now, a lot of figures on this, but I'll go through it. It's fairly straightforward. Once we get the first one out of the way, it'll be nice and easy. The column there for first count is the number of first preference votes each of the options got. So the number 10 under first count in option A, status quo, means 10 people gave their first preference vote, a number 1 to option A. If you look at the top right corner, you'll see the total votes cast was 87. We did have 88 this morning, but 1 member had to leave. We had 1 invalid paper, so we've a valid poll of 86. The quota in this case is literally just 50% plus 1. So it's half of 86, which is 43, plus 1 is 44. Any option that gets 44 votes has a majority. If it gets it on the first count, it's an overall majority first preference on the first count. Nobody did here. If you look down the first count column, we had 10 votes for option A, 8 for option B, health diversion, 23 for option C, comprehensive health led, 9 for option D, tolerance, and 36 for option E, legalization and regulation. At that stage, because no option has actually reached the quota or got a majority, the rules are that we eliminate the lowest of the options and we redistribute it. So we take option B, which has 8 votes, and we look at those 8 papers and we look for the second preferences on them. So on the column for second count, you'll see that on the second count, option A, status quo, received plus 3 votes, giving it a running total of 13. Option B receives minus 8, giving it a running total of 0 now. Option C received plus 2, giving it 25. And option D and E didn't get any. There's 1 extra line on the bottom which is non-transferable votes. You'll see this throughout all of them. All that means is that those 3 people didn't put a second preference on the paper. They only went for number 1. So we can't decide what their second preference was because they didn't give us one. So they sit there as 3 votes in the non-transferable column. At that stage, we still don't have a quota. Option E at that stage has 36 votes, which is the highest, but it's still short of the 44. We therefore take the 9 votes that option D has, which is now the lowest, and we divide those up on the third count. And of those 9, C got 7 and E got 2. At that stage, we're left with a 13, a 32, and a 38. So option A with 13 votes is eliminated. And of those 13, option C got 7, and 6 of them were non-transferable, didn't have another preference that we can go to. So this one has actually ended up as a very tight result. We now have 2 people left at this stage, or 2 used to people. 2 options left at this stage. Option C has 39 votes and option E has 38. Now, the rules are you eliminate the lowest, which is option E, albeit only by 1. But in fact, when you get to this stage, there's no point in even doing that, because when you eliminate the lowest, there's only 1 horse left in the race. This is exactly what happens at a national election when you'll hear on the news that a particular candidate was elected without reaching the quota. They didn't make it as far as the quota. The 39 is short of the 44, but there's nobody else left to run against them. There's only one other option, and when you eliminate that, there's only one left. So the consensus here, albeit by a small margin, is for cannabis, a comprehensive health-led option or approach is the consensus. Can we have the next slide? Sorry, does anybody want to query any of the explanation? I mean,
Maybe finish.
yeah, to finish, yeah.
Let's ask Kieran to finish and then we can take.
Yeah. So here's the same for option, for the option for, I'm going to call this DMT, etc., if you don't mind, just because I can't pronounce some of those. So again, we had 87 votes. We had 2 invalid papers in this, which gives us a valid poll of 85. The quota is slightly lower on this, therefore at 43. The status quo got 13 first preference, health diversion got 7, comprehensive health-led got 28, tolerance got 13, and legalisation and regulation got 24. So therefore, we eliminate the 7 votes for health diversion. That still didn't give us a quota on any of the options. At that stage, option C is in the lead with 30, but still well short of the 43. So we eliminate the 13 votes for option D, distribute their next preferences across the rest. That gave us a 36 for comprehensive health-led, 31 for legalisation, and 16 for the status quo. Again, there's no clear quota, so we eliminate the 16, which leaves us with 42 for the comprehensive health-led and 31 for the legalisation. So again, we're in a position of eliminating legalisation and regulation and comprehensive health-led, albeit by a bigger margin this time, but still not quite the quota. It's 1 vote short, is the consensus view. The next slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, it's up.
Yeah.
Now, on this one, we had 87, less 1 spoiled vote is 86, so our quota again is 44. The options for the first count were 19 for status quo, 11 for health diversion, 35 for comprehensive health-led approach, and 13 for tolerance, and 8 for legalisation. We eliminate the 8 for legalisation. Again, nobody has reached the quota. So when we distribute that, comprehensive health-led got 4 of the 8 and tolerance got the other 4. That leaves us with health diversion at 11 votes as the lowest remaining option. So we eliminate that. Of those 11, 3 go to the status quo, 4 go to the comprehensive health-led, and the remaining 4 don't have any other preference, so they go to non-transferable. We now have 43 for comprehensive health-led, 22 for status quo, 17 for tolerance. We eliminate the 17 for tolerance and redistribute those, and that gives us 22 for the status quo and 56 for the comprehensive health-led. It got 13 of the 17 votes. That means comprehensive health-led has easily at that stage exceeded the quota and is therefore the consensus option. And the final slide is for all other drugs, and this was even slightly shorter. Again, we had 2 spoiled votes on this, so the quota, the valid poll is 85, the quota is 43. We got 20 first preferences for status quo, 11 for health diversion, 38 for comprehensive health-led, 10 for tolerance, 6 for legalisation. We eliminate the 6 for legalisation and divide those up. That leaves us with comprehensive health-led in the lead with 39, and at the bottom of the list is health diversion at 11. So we divide those 11 up. That gives us +3 for status quo, giving it 23, +6 for comprehensive health-led, giving it 45, 0 added for tolerance, leaving it at 15. At this stage, comprehensive health-led has exceeded the quota. It's got 45 votes. So even if you add the 23 and the 15 together, you can't catch a 45. So comprehensive health-led on the third count gives us the result for all other drugs. Just to point out that this particular set of results has actually given you back the universal approach that we had the yes-no vote on. And I did mention on the discussion earlier that you could easily end up with that. You could easily have actually ended up with the status quo for everything on this. But at least you've now had the option to dive into it and do it in a little more subtle way than just a yes, no to one size fits all. So it's not by any means unusual when you go to individual votes like this that you actually end up with potentially an option you may have apparently discarded earlier, but that's the way you've ended up with it. Is that okay?
So the summary is the comprehensive led approach across the board.
Across the board.
To swap it incident. So we just ask Karen to stay here, and we just, any kind of technical questions just in terms of the process? Jack, here, we can get a mic just up here.
I just wanted to ask about the non-transferable votes. Just, I guess, could you kind of elaborate a bit more about them and
Yes, sure.
the part that they play in all this?
Yeah. On any vote like this where you're ranking number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you fill in all preferences, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or in practice, if you fill in all except 1, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, your vote will always remain in the count assigned to one of the options. It might move around, but it remains in. Because what we do is, when we look at for example, on the screen that's up there, legalisation and regulation, 6 people gave it their number 1. We know legalisation and regulation isn't going to win the race. It's at the bottom of it's the last runner. It's going to be knocked out. So we've got 6 votes that people have given a first preference to legalisation and regulation. We then look at each of those 6 and we see what's their second preference. So if somebody said, my first preference is legalisation, if I don't get that, I want tolerance. We then put that vote on top of the pile for tolerance. That adds to the vote for tolerance. And in this case, 5 out of the 6 of them did go for tolerance. The catch is, if they didn't put a number 2 on their vote, they only put a number 1 on, no number 2, then we can't add their vote to any of the other piles. I can't just make up, I think they probably meant tolerance, because it makes sense to me. So they go into the non-transferable, which means their vote no longer actually plays a part in the election. It counted on the first count, and it was used to determine whether their option got a majority or stayed in a running. Now that it's out of the running, if they haven't given a second preference, and this applies to all elections, if you're voting for the president, if you're voting for your local TD or your local councillor, if you only put a first preference vote on, you're voting for that person, but you're not giving any indication of how you would like your vote to continue if that person's knocked out. And that's exactly what happens here. Where we can, if somebody has given us an indication of their preferences and we say, right, your first preference is out, but your second choice is still in, we'll add your vote to the second choice. And that's where the non-transferable comes in.
And I guess I also wanted to ask...
okay, just last one. I'm trying to get some other people.
Oh yeah, I'll be brief. I also wanted to ask as well, because for the first one there about cannabis, that was incredibly tight,
Yes.
and none of them actually reached the quota, whereas for some of them they very much surpassed the quota. I guess obviously this, like, how is that going to be represented, because one represents a very tight race where like literally only one, there's only one, like, you know, outstanding vote being the one that decides which one gets passed. Like, would that be reflected, and should that be reflected?
Well, you could certainly, my suggestion on that was that you would put some comment in the narrative of the report to indicate that this was an extremely tight vote.
This detail would be in the report.
Yeah.
This detail would be in it.
It's not unusual in votes where you have a relatively low number of voters, where we get, well, even in general elections, you'll sometimes get, there was one in Cork a couple of years ago that went on for weeks because every time they counted the votes, they came up with a different number. But in a small, relatively small number, like 100 people, it's not unusual that you would end up with a close vote.
No?
So I'm still struggling to understand why the status quo was an option on this, because at the very start, the first vote we did was to eliminate the status quo. And as we're seeing here, it's having a big impact on second and third count. So can you help me with that?
I can come in there if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can explain that, Noel. The status quo in stage one of the vote was to decide whether or not the status quo for all drugs should be recommended, right? So it was that universal approach to all drugs, and that was clear in the voting on stage 1, is that should the status quo for all drugs be retained or eliminated. So it was eliminated as an approach to all drugs. And now the reason it is included again in this stage is because it could be part of a hybrid solution for certain drugs. For example, all other drugs might remain the status quo, whereas there could have been a change for cannabis or cocaine or any one. So it is a valid option within that hybrid approach, and that's why it is reintroduced as a legitimate option within this part of the process.
The other point I would make to add to that, it actually doesn't have the effect you think it has. Because if we took status quo off the ballot paper for the option that you're looking at here, there was 10 people gave a first preference to status quo, and they gave their second. 3 of those gave their second preference. Sorry, those 10 people, beg your pardon, they when they were eliminated, 7 of those 10 gave their second preference to comprehensive health led. That's where the option went. Those 7 people, if there was no status quo on the paper, would have just given their first preference to comprehensive health led, because by giving it their second there, it means it's their best option after status quo. So the fact that it's taken until the 4th count for their votes to be added to a different pile just delays that addition. It doesn't actually change the outcome. It just delays it. If you removed status quo, all of the voters who would have voted for status quo would now just give their second, what would have been their second preference would be their first, and it would just get counted a little quicker in the process.
And if I could just add, Noel, if you think about it, so option A, status quo, was as a universal solution removed in voting stage 1, but options B, C, D and E as universal solutions were also excluded in voting stage 2. So each and every one of those as a universal solution in that first past the post measure was excluded either at stage 1 or stage 2, and they all get reintroduced in stage 3 as a potential hybrid approach.
Can I check any other technical questions just in terms of process and outcome? Okay, it's okay. Just behind you.
A very technical question, but for the cannabis vote, were the votes recounted?
Yes, the votes were double counted.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thanks. Zain, come on.
So, sorry, just not about the vote here, but general policy questions. I know we have a slightly different policy for the cannabis at the moment, and does it mean that after this vote, and the policy for all type of drug are moving to uniform, including the current policy, like the cannabis legal, like changing the existing one, the status quo to all uniform ones?
So the way I would explain that, Zin, is if the government does decide to legislate along the lines of this recommendation for a health-led approach or a comprehensive health-led approach, it will have implications for other pieces of legislation like the adult caution scheme that exists. So yes, there will be that adult caution that kind of is available for first-time cannabis offenders at the moment will logically change once there's a new legislation introduced.
Is that possible that the policy is going to be a fairly loose policy to a more strict policy for this type of drug?
I think now the details have to be worked out by the Oireachtas. If they decide to follow the recommendation of the Assembly, a lot of the details will have to be worked out by the elected representatives in the Oireachtas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zain. Okay. On that basis, I'm going to just take it that you've had a deliberation at your table in relation to ballot paper 3. I should say I've asked the team to give you out ballot papers 4, 5 and 6, so at least you have a look ahead in terms of some ballot papers. But I'm just reverting back to ballot paper 3 now, and we still have to ballot on ballot paper 2. Or sorry, ballot paper 1. We still have to ballot on ballot paper 1. Yeah? Just take the screen down. Okay, so can I, while we're getting the ballot paper ready for ballot paper 1, yeah, ready? Gonna try have the discussion now around ballot paper 3. So table, Marie. Okay, folks, can we just tune in? We're having the discussion on table 3. Or sorry, on ballot paper 3.
On ballot paper 3,
Yeah.
our table.
Sorry, folks. Sorry, can we do just... Sorry, Simon, can we just... There's people... Go ahead. Table 11.
On ballot paper 3, from 3.1 to 3.5, we at the table here think that 3.5 really hits the nail on the head. And we feel that that really should be the number 1. Thank you.
Sorry, and Marie, just so I clarify, do you feel you should drop the others?
No.
Okay.
But that's the leader of the pack.
Okay, so you think it should be start with that one?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And maybe amalgamate some of the others into it, but that particular statement is the strongest, and we believe at the table that it's the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It's clear enough. Okay, table 7.
Thank you. Sorry now. Oh, yeah. Drugs, 3.2, drugs misuse as a policy priority. The explanatory narrative is one long sentence covering 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. My suggestion is the last part of that sentence, and requires a whole of government and whole of society response, is very important. So therefore, a full stop should be placed after the words wider society and a new sentence which reads, this requires a whole of government and whole of society response, just to strengthen the impact of the final part of that long sentence.
Okay. Can I just urge, and let's look at that. If we do get lost in all the individual narratives and full stops, we've lots of time to be able to do that. We really want to keep up at the high level of what the recommendation is. But look, I have a noted here. So, yeah, please. Table 10.
So it's just for 3.5. It says that a cabinet committee should consider a detailed report on drug trends and emerging risks. At our table, we were just thinking that it should consider and also have that report published just to the public, so increase transparency and hopefully...
Publication report.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Claire, I just missed the first bit. Table 5.
Chair, I've been asked to ask the question on behalf of the table. 3.9, they would like to add an inclusion, so it should read, or the table would like it to read, government should work with key service user stakeholders to build an effective whole society response to drug-related issues. So to include the words service users.
Okay. Have I captured that correctly? Key service users.
Is that okay for you?
Service users. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to come back to you on all these, yeah. So, okay.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on 3.2, the headline is government should prioritise drug misuse as a policy priority. That's just a statement. What we'd like to add to that is as part of an overall socio-economic strategy, to add to that, to make it more robust, and that there's a bit of accountability added to it. So I leave that up to you how to put that.
Okay. So I'm going to take one more and just going to test the room then, and a few actually. I'll take 2 more. Table 12 first. You have the mic.
Yeah, sorry. Just on 3.1, given the lack of urgency shown in the implementation of legislation, I'm wondering whether it should include at the end, including legislative change implementation.
Can I just clarify this is 3.1, yeah?
Yeah, it says it should take urgent, decisive and ambitious action to improve its response to the harmful impacts of drug use, including the necessary legislative changes.
Okay, I'm clear.
Or some wording in that line.
Yeah, I'm clear. I understand. Okay, John, one more, and I just want to test the room on a few.
Why don't we appoint a drug czar who has the budget and the responsibility for delivering, rather than just farming this out to individual departments who will shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's not really our fault, it's their fault.
Okay. Okay. Just test the room on a few things. Do you want to make comment on the drugs are?
Yeah, well, on the question of a drug czar, I think that it's a suggestion that might have been made earlier in the process. The idea that has emerged most strongly is the idea that there would be a whole of government approach to it, and there's a recommendation in there at the moment that this would be escalated at the highest levels to a cabinet committee chaired by the Taoiseach and senior officials group, and there is a lot of evidence we have from the feedback and the roundtable discussions over the process that that's by far the most prominent proposition coming from the members. There hasn't been a lot of propositions coming, to be honest with you, John, around drugs are.
And just...
No one takes responsibility.
Yeah.
We see this continually with the Children's Hospital, we see it with Lewis, everything. So one person responsible, a programme of delivery to us, not the Cabinet, to us, the citizens.
But just on John, I'm going to give you a view and we'll test it in the room as well. I think Orla Quinn, if you remember her presentation at the last time, she advocated there's not one single agency you can drive a complex problem, but you needed to bring it to the highest level of government. And that, I'm only saying to you, I'm telling you, sorry, advising my experience, that is where the rubber hits the road. So it gets the top priority at a political. You could potentially have an appointed czar flying solo without getting the political weight behind them. So that's my experience of driving reform in the civil service and public service. I do want to test some of these. I'm not ruling out, and that's just a view. Jack, one more, and I want to test these with the audience. Last one.
Table 2 as a recommendation, recommendation 3.4, it says the government should publish a new iteration of the National Drug Strategy as a matter of urgency, and it says that the first draft should be published by the end of 2024, the first draft. We believe at this table that this date is too late and that possibly this should be amended to June 2024 for the first draft of the new National Drug Strategy.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay, just going to test the room on a few here now. So first of all, 3.5, there's a view that it needs to become more prominent and pulled up to the top of these set of recommendations. Just a quick show of hands. Everybody agreed in terms of that it should be placed up more prominent? Okay, we'll do that. Second, again, was on 3.2. It was a suggestion of a greater explanation in the narrative and change it, and I'll ask all on the team to look at that. But again, I'm trying to keep on the big ones. 3.5 was that we include publication of the report. Sorry, is everybody okay with that? That we would reference publication report? Quick show of hands, please. Okay, we'll do that. 3.9 reference including service users. Who's all those in favour of including that? So it would be service users and stakeholders. All those in favour? Just keep the hands up for a second, please. Okay. Okay. Yeah, fine. We will do that. And 3.2 suggestion came as part, we should include as part of a wider overall socio-economic strategy or something to that impact. All those in favour, please. Quick show of hands. Yeah, okay, that's clear enough. 3.1 that we would include reference, also including the necessary legislation. In 3.1, including implementing necessary legislative changes. Carl's much better at this than me. All those in favour of that? Okay, carried. And then, I'm just going to go 3.4 first. Reference to change from end of 24 to June 24. All those in favour of making that change? Yeah, that's strong. The issue of who believes we should put in a recommendation to appoint a drug czar. I'm testing the room. This is not a ballot right now. All of those, we'll make those changes. Can I test the room? Who believes the appointment of a drug czar should be a recommendation? Okay, not carried. Thank you. Okay, look, thanks very much for that. Go ahead. Apologies. Go ahead. Okay, Zane, 1 second. 1 second. Zane, just 1 second. 3.5. We got that, yeah. Okay, can you please raise your hand if you want to make a comment and we'll get a mic. Zin, did you want to make a comment? No? Okay, and then
Sorry, Paul and Cahill, I didn't want to be rude, and just I had some questions, and they could be easily clarified. And so, first is 3.8 that it mentioned drug policy design and implementations should be informed by service user and people who use drugs, but in the exploratory narrative, and it also said as well as family members of people affected by drugs, and there should be added the family members as well. And the second one is if you could clarify that the 3.1, that is a high-level explanation narrative, that the action, and the 3.2 is the misuse policies, and it seems like a very high-level summarization of 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and 7 and 8. So could you please clarify what are the emphases and the difference between 1 and 2 and the rest of them, and can we put some together and make them more, like maybe clean up a little bit? Thanks.
So the first one was 3.8, we're including adding family members, isn't that correct?
Yeah. So that yellow piece there.
Can we just, everybody okay with that, that we'd add family members to, you got it properly place? Yeah? Hands, quick show of hands, everybody okay with that? Good, thank you.
And so, Zin, can I clarify, you want to understand the difference between 3.1 and 3.2?
Just 1 second, Zin, we get your mic.
Sorry, yes, I think first is the differences between 3.1 and 2. Actually, it is okay because one is on action, the other one is on policy, and the rest of them, and then 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 6, 7, and 8, and they seem like a detailed extension of 3.1 and 3.2. And may I ask, what are the 1 and the 2 emphases about as different from the rest?
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll just try to very briefly describe. So the first one is a high-level statement about it's almost like a mission statement or a statement of expression of the Citizens' Assembly's view that drugs misuse should be treated ambitiously by the state. So it's a high-level, almost like a mission statement. Then as we drill down into putting it as a priority, it's making it a government policy priority is 3.2. 3.3 then and 3.4 and so on get into different areas of government that so this is calling for policy coherence and operational cohesion and effective leadership. It is in a way an extension of the argument that this should be treated as a priority, but it's an expression, and you arguably could combine it, but it would become a very lengthy recommendation 3.1. And as we get on then, this 3.4 focuses on the strategy itself, and calling for an urgent publication of the next, of the draft of the next strategy. This is political prominence and the role of a cabinet committee and a senior officials group. It's a different part of the equation. They're all different parts of the same proposition, which is that the state's response to drugs misuse and the harmful impacts should be tackled with greater urgency and greater prominence and so on.
Sorry, I know Rebecca was trying to get in on table 8.
Yeah, just a very quick point I'd like to make. It was brought up at a couple of other tables. Possibly it could be inserted on on 3.3 or 3.4 about accountability. I feel very strongly that accountability is ignored within the Oireachtas and Dáil Éireann, and everything is, traditionally issues are kicked down the road. So I really think we need to, as well as mentioning timeframes and action plans and publishing public statements, we need to include accountability somewhere.
Okay, well made.
Thanks. And Rebecca, perhaps it hasn't come across clearly enough, but the accountability mechanism here, I think, appears in 3.5 with the publication of a detailed annual report on drugs, trends and emerging risks that goes to government. So the accountability is an annual detailed report, and elsewhere in the ballot paper actually there's also a financial accountability as well. So I don't know if there's any other language or suggestion.
I think, sorry, Rebecca, if I've got you right, I think it's it's kind of throughout you want it strengthened, that there is accountability for delivering. and
Yeah, I
doing-
do.
doing
I
these
want the
actions.
actual word accountability with our legislators and politicians. That's just a personal viewpoint,
No, no.
and I can't, in all good conscience, ignore that.
Yeah, no, and I hear you strongly, and I think it's something we can do. If you want to, maybe just.
Thank you.
Anna's come up with a proposal here, or somebody has come up with a proposal that Anna's shown me, which reads as follows. And so, I don't know, something like that. So publish and consider and publish a detailed annual report on trends and risks and the government's responses to these. Something like that.
Or accountability for government responses. Yeah.
A response isn't the same as accountability. Responses can be empty.
I think there's a strong message from the Assembly at previous meetings as well. We want accountability firmed up. And,
Can we put it to the room for a vote?
I don't think we can.
We just need wording.
No, we're there, we're all there. We're there, it has to be in there.
It's just a question of finding the word.
So I think it's about accountability to deliver.
I think it might be quite powerful, Paul, if we did have a quick show of hands.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Oh, no, look, sorry, I bet it's everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so can we do that?
Sorry,
Quick
gets
show of
my
hands.
vote. You can, of course. Who believes we should strengthen the reference to accountability? Well done.
Now, how do we do it?
No, I mean, well done. Now, without just 1 second, I will come to Alana and I know table 12 as well. So just give us a couple of minutes to think and we'll come back to this before we put the ballot papers out. Okay, Alana, I know you had your hand up first here. And then we'll go back to table 12 and then table 4.
In relation to the accountability part, I just presumed that maybe an independent body would be put together like HICWA was for anything kind of HSE. So if it's an independent body that measures the service and gives the proper guidelines rather than the government or the Oireachtas having all the accountability, I think that would potentially work better. I just don't understand why that wasn't considered.
Yeah, and again, it's the SAR or single body, approach.
No, I mean like HICWA, not one person. I mean an independent body.
Yeah. Just give you advice. I think Orla was better explaining this. Here's my view, and we can put this out. This issue of drugs, as you've seen, crosses a number of various departments. There's an education perspective about it. There's a justice perspective about it. There's a health perspective about it. So there's a housing, this is a wider socio-economic perspective about it. I would not dare try simplify that one body will deliver across those. One government minister, one senior accountability at government, which I think is coming through stronger, is a better approach to solve a complex issue like this, in my experience. Yeah, so
The HSE kind of didn't work for them until HICWA came about, so.
Yeah, just give me a view. So can I just, Rebecca, sorry, I'm just going to say, thinking on my feet, I'm thinking on my chair here. If we were to put a particular ballot, specific ballot in itself, and this is not the wording, but we'll come up with some specific ballot in itself that, the Assembly expects to see accountability assigned and for delivery of implementation of recommendations. Something like that. Everybody in favour, we do about something like that. Okay? Right. Quick. That the Assembly believes, don't quote me on the wording here, Abigail, the Assembly believes that government need to assign accountability for delivery against the actions recommended by the Assembly. Okay? Yeah. No, I think that's, if you're saying government need to do it, accountability, it'll have to be at a very senior level, at government level, I expect. But look, let us craft something. Sorry, we'll do something on that. Table 12. Sorry, apologies.
Hi, sorry, just on 3.6, it says involvement in implementing the next iteration of the National Drug Strategy. Should that just not be implementing iterations of National Drug Strategies in general, rather than just the next one? And
I think that makes sense.
On the point relating to June 2024, just as again, my understanding is our recommendations have to go to a committee and then be approved, and then later on it would be implemented. So I just asked the question whether June 24 is a realistic date. It does show our need for urgency, but in terms of the likely timelines, is it a realistic date?
Well, there is potentially nothing stopping the publication of a report in conjunction with going through our process in the Oireachtas, you know. So I think it's worthwhile just putting the pressure on it. So,
Sorry, I'm just asking a question on behalf of a member of our table. On 3.5, they would like a cabinet committee to be changed to a cross-party committee in order to ensure neutrality.
If I could just come in and explain the difference between a cabinet committee and a cross-party committee. So a cabinet committee is a structure within government, right? And a cross-party committee is a structure within the Oireachtas. They're two kind of different locations, right? So what you're talking about is a joint Oireachtas committee in terms of having a cross-party approach, whereas a cabinet committee is what operates as a subcommittee of the government. So they're two different things, and you can certainly make a recommendation as well about having a cross-party approach within the Oireachtas. That already exists through the joint Oireachtas committee structure. So it's why we didn't include it, because it already does exist.
yeah, and my advice would be not to weaken the one about a cabinet committee. It's where the rubber hits the road at the government level. Table 4, Kerry first, and then...
On 3.6 and 3.8, when we're talking about stakeholder involvement and then the service users and others informing it, can we talk about how they're going to be supported and funded to do that, or make some... I know there's a section recommendation around funding, but can we have some sort of wording that acknowledges that they have to be facilitated, supported and funded to do that? Yeah. That their involvement and engagement doesn't just happen, that there has to be provision made and structures put in place to ensure that happens.
Okay. Do you want to make any comment?
Yeah, well, as you said, it does come up later in the balloting process around funding and resources that there would be funding allocated, but we can include it here as well, or propose to include it here as well.
Okay. So Evelyn, one last point, yeah.
Dr. Orla Quinn the last time recommended to us at our table that we include in 3.4 that drug use is on the agenda at that committee meeting quarterly with mandatory attendance from key stakeholders. So I don't know, would that be possible?
Yeah, I wasn't at your table when Orla was talking about that. So what we would be recommending is a dedicated cabinet committee on this item, right? So, you know, when you're saying included as an item on the agenda, it would be the agenda that would be meeting on a quarterly basis from the cabinet committee. So sorry. I think what Orla might have been referencing was there is an existing committee that exists of which this can be tabled, and it's not tabled that often. Well, we're saying a new and dedicated committee, or dedicated.
Okay, I think it might be best to specify that then in the cabinet committee references is a dedicated cabinet committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that way you get your point of it addressed. So dedicated and that thing. Ciara, one more.
Okay. Sorry, at the risk of frustrating everyone here with another question, we just had a view at the table that we thought that the recommendations were going to be in the region of 6 to 10. And we're just wondering here, like these are all valid recommendations, but how do we get to a point where we prioritise, that we ensure that government don't cherry pick, maybe which ones to get through? Do we have a process at the end once we've agreed all of these recommendations? Could you talk to that, please? Thanks.
Thanks, Ciara. I agree with you. I mean, there was various numbers. Each table at the end of the last meeting was asked their view about how many recommendations. I think we'd started off with a lowball number of 5 to 10. The consensus around the room seemed to be in the region of 20. For most of the tables at the last meeting, there seemed to be a view that around 20 was the right number. In reality, when push came to shove, as we described, whittling down 1,500 propositions down to 20 proved beyond our ability. So we've ended up in the region of, I think, 30. It's still significantly under the level of recommendations made by most previous citizens' assemblies. Whether there's an opportunity to streamline or not, I don't know. But to go to your question, like if we can live with 30 being the number, there isn't really, I don't think, a risk of the government cherry picking. As I said, they will have to go through an exercise in transparency and accountability when they publish their response to each and every one of the recommendations. And that's what they've committed to in the terms of reference. So I know it keeps coming up, how do we ensure that the government doesn't ignore the first half of the recommendations and only implement the second half? The answer is they do have to give what's called a reasoned, considered response to each and every one of the recommendations.
Okay, I'm going to draw us into a point here now to try and move us on. If there is one more pressing question. No, right at the back. Yeah.
This is on behalf of the table, who wanted to reiterate strongly that they would like some kind of independent oversight of any cabinet committee or any structure that was to drive this forward.
Well, look, the question around the Cabinet Committee, independent oversight of the Cabinet Committee, like ultimately a Cabinet Committee is made up of the government who's elected by the people. So, I mean, ultimately this will be an exercise in, government policy, reflecting and capturing what the people of the country want. I mean, that's the ultimate level of accountability. But there will be also a National Oversight Committee. It already exists for the current strategy. What's missing at the moment is the relationship between that National Oversight Committee upwards into the political system. So the creation of a new Cabinet Committee on Drugs is that oversight of what exists already.
Okay, I really need to move us in. Really last one, please.
Sorry, just one quick suggestion on 3.5. Can we change the passive phrase and make it active? So we say, for example, supported by, and change it to the body who is going to support and who must support. And also, when we talked about the senior official group and assign accountability to the senior official group, and can we publish the body and the specific person or group, the name of the, and along with the report? Thank you.
And the Cabinet Committee would be specified if it is agreed that there's a Cabinet Committee?
And a more detailed individual or group, is it possible?
Cabinet Committee is chaired by the Taoiseach, if it's a dedicated, if our recommendation was agreed.
Yeah, and as long as that's part of the report and be published, and rather than a senior official group, and that would be great.
That would be the outcome. If
Yeah.
our agreement, Taoiseach would be the chair, nominated person to chair it, and the senior officials group would reflect the various departments.
Thank you. And just one suggestion, if we could rephrase the passive to active, please. That would be more powerful, I suppose.
Particulars then?
Sorry.
Which passive?
For example, we have the passive phrase, right? Supported by a senior official group, and can we change it to a senior officials group supports something? And also the last, the Department of Health must be supported in providing effective leadership and coordination of the work of the National Oversight Committee. And can we rephrase it to active? Who is supporting the Department of Health? So just the expression thing. Thanks. And also, one quick question is, if people vote for 3.5, does it mean people automatically agree for 3.2? And if someone votes disagree and agree contradiction for 3.2 and 3.5, and is that considered as valid? That's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to test the room just on the second one. Do we want to reflect a more passive or active instead of passive, or we just where that stands at the minute? Is everybody happy where it stands, or do you want to reflect something more passive? Is everybody happy where it stands? Just quick show of hands. 3.5 with the change we can. Okay, we're going to leave that one. Okay, just the one piece we need to come back to you on when we have time is the greater accountability ballot papers to put out. So just leave that with us. On that basis, I'm going to quick show of hands. Everybody, with the change that we've made here in real time, if everybody's happy that we will get that ballot paper ready for you now for ballot paper 3. Okay, quick show of hands. Thank you very much
So we
for
don't
working
need
through us.
a line-by-line vote? No.
No,
Okay.
we'll just bring the ballot paper.
Yeah.
Only ballot.
Okay.
So we will get that. What I'm proposing now is we have ballot paper 1 ready for you now to vote on. We're going to strip it back. Ballot paper 1, and can we also distribute 4, 5 and 6 out to everybody? Yeah. So ballot paper 1, we're going to just get you to this is what we went through earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, Jesse and Marcus again. Jesse and Marcus, if we can get you again, please. Sorry. Yeah, let them go. Yeah, keep them moving. Could you not have kept?
Sorry, Paul.
I'm just checking this.
Have they got? I love to hear. Fair play. Where'd you get it? Where'd you go in Mexico? Love it. Ah, fair play to you, yeah. And the kids with you? Lovely. Well done. No. I did not. Lies. Okay, feel free to grab a cup of tea, please, everybody. Can I just check that everybody has cast their vote who wants to cast their vote on ballot paper 1? Final call for ballot paper 1, a green ballot paper. Ballot paper 1, please. Yeah, that's it, Leonida, yeah. What was that? Okay, one last check. Is everybody who wants to vote and ballot 1 cast their vote with the green ballot paper? And we are distributing ballot papers 4, 5 and 6 to your tables now at the moment. You just grab a cup of tea and we'll take time. Trying to do things in parallel. Yeah. Attention. Okay, everybody back at your tables, please. Avalee and James, let's go. We're back. Okay, look, we've a couple of things to move to now. We want to move to ballot paper number 4, and we're also finalising the actual ballot paper for balloting on is of number 3, based on the work that you did. So while they're doing that, we'll move straight into ballot paper 4, and I'll ask Cathal to give a quick summary of what this is setting out to do at a high level. And again, sorry, Kerry just pointed out to me there's references here to the next strategy, and based on what was changed in the previous ones, we'll just say this strategy rather than saying the next strategy, so don't need to repeat that again. If that makes sense.
Paul.
Thanks.
So ballot paper 4 is one of those ballot papers that has been changed, and in a sense we've merged different recommendations from the previous draft all into this new ballot paper that we are calling Funding and Resources, Service Design and Research. So there's a lot of different components in here. There's 9 questions or 9 draft recommendations in total. It covers additional funding across the statutory and community and voluntary sectors. It covers specifically additional resources for community-based and residential treatment and recovery as an alternative to custodial sentences. And I think this is one worth bearing in mind, because a lot of what we heard previously in the Assembly was around things that the courts could do as alternatives to custodial sentences if those options were available for them to refer people in front of the courts to. So this is recommending that there should be additional resources to create those services within community-based and residential-based settings, so that judges have an opportunity to refer people away from the court system into these services if they're more appropriate for the particular person. And similarly, we've heard a lot about the deficits and the availability of treatment services within the prison system, and this is a recommendation arguing for an increase in prison-based addiction treatment services for people, any person with problematic drug use. And it goes to the point I think was made a little while ago about increased staffing levels for addiction services within the system as well. So it is pointing out the need for not just additional money, but additional trained personnel to work in the services. And novel funding sources, this is quite relevant as well, because there is and has been a lot of debate within the Assembly around will the Assembly's recommendations be implemented if there isn't sufficient resources. And so one of the things we're calling for here is that, as well as exchequer funding, taxpayers' money going in to fund additional services, that the government should examine the potential of novel funding sources, such as, and we go down here to mention things like criminal assets and the proceeds of crime, and various other things that could be done to generate revenues to fund services. And that's really a recommendation. We don't have any specific we don't have any very specific things to recommend, but as a principle, novel sources of funding, I think, should be explored as a potential meaningful additional source of funding. Transparency of expenditure. This was an issue that came up. It's not that there's necessarily a suggestion that there isn't transparency, but it's very difficult, and it has been very difficult, I think, for this Assembly to get our hands on detailed information about the number of community and voluntary service organisations that get funding and how much funding they get in any given year, and then to try and generate a whole of, if you like, a whole of government perspective. So the Department of Health and HSE might report their expenditure, but the Department of Justice or other departments report separately. So it would be a recommendation just calling on greater levels of transparency around drug-related expenditure. As Paul said, we'll fix this next iteration. So national drug strategies in general should include a strategic workforce development plan, which was something, and it does reference here Section 39 organisations, which is a very live issue at the moment. I don't know whether you want to comment on that, Paul.
Yeah, and look, you will have heard previously people from the voluntary sector saying they find it hard to retain staff, attract staff, because of the different pay rates between what's called Section 39 organisations, who are funded by generally the health system, but have a differential pay rate. It was the subject of the Workplace Relations Commission discussions last week, and there are recommendations going to members of the various trade unions about starting the process of addressing that gap. So it's still relevant. It's still a relevant issue.
Yeah, but we did, as a principle here, an awful lot of suggestions from various different people working in the community and voluntary sector organisations, but also, for example, the Irish College of General Practitioners, we heard about the potential additional capacity for pharmacists and addiction nurses and so many other people working within the system that could each of them have a role and a contribution to make. We also heard about peer support workers and peer mentors and the important value that they bring and the important expertise that they bring to supporting people dealing with drug-related problems. So there's a whole range of different people within the workforce above and beyond, you know, doctors and addiction specialists that may have important roles to play that could be expanded. And the whole concept of a national strategic workforce development plan is to look at that in the totality and say, if there is to be additional services required at community level within prisons, where are the skilled personnel going to come from? And the answer is probably to be figured out in the strategic workforce development plan. Mandatory trauma-informed training for key personnel, I think, speaks for itself. It's a call that has been come up time and again, and it crosses all the different parts and all the different players within the health system, within the criminal justice system, and so on. So I think it's just a self-explanatory recommendation. Family supports, which goes back to I think a comment that Kerry made at the last ballot paper, was that the government should recognise and value the role of family members in supporting people affected by drug use and their children. And that was a very strong theme throughout the work of the Assembly as well. Continuity of care, I think, was something that came up, and particularly when it comes to issues like people with complex needs, you know, people with dual diagnosis, or people who have addiction issues but are also homeless or have other really sort of multifaceted complex needs. There is a need for joined up and continuity of care across the system. And that is really it. It's a series of recommendations that have emerged from your own deliberations throughout the process, and we've tried to put them together into a cohesive ballot paper with 9 questions, and if I don't shut up, we'll never get them answered.
Okay, well done, Colin. Thank you. So look, can we say 10 minutes at your table? We'll try to do what we did last time, quick fire of issues and quick voting to what we should change, etc. So 10 minutes, please, and we'll just leave you reflect. Move through things, do justice to them, but try move reasonably swiftly through. So if I can, we just kick straight in. Again, we're on ballot paper number 4. Just before you do this, one quick check. I propose we try to take some questions here, and then we'll go to take ballot 3, which the papers are ready for. So, okay, roaming micers, please, if you can go to some table first, table 11, I think first, and then table 8, and then I'll go across. We'll get to you. Table 11, Abigail.
Hi, everyone. I suppose going through the recommendations here, there was just something that felt like it was a big piece that was missing, and I think my table agreed with me there, and we had a recommendation from the table. Based on the vote that we've had today already, we talked about a health-led approach, and I feel that if we're going down that road, it's important to have a service that exists within the HSE that's available nationwide and within each county, where anyone who's looking to get help with an addiction problem can access that service and can avail of a multidisciplinary team approach. I just feel that at the moment we're talking a lot about voluntary services and community-based services, and as well as they're good, they shouldn't be the status quo, which seems to be that way right now.
So can I just clarify, Abigail, it's what's missing, you believe, is something strengthened around the accessibility to statutory services, for example, the HSE.
Yeah, because like right now, if anyone wants to get, say, a treatment facility, there's none available within the HSE, and if we're talking about a health-led approach and the HSE is in charge, so to speak, of our health, it doesn't make any sense that we don't have anything within that.
Yeah, no, I think it's clear. So I'm just noting it, and we'll see where we can fit something like that, or make sure we put something like that. I'll keep taking, table 8, I know I said be next, and then we'll move to the right-hand side, and we have a few tables.
Just for the 4.7, we were just talking around adding more specifically GPs, so general practitioners, and primary health units, that those people are specifically mentioned in there for the mandatory training, that's in every community, so everybody can access that.
And sorry, just so I'm clear, you reference GPs, you said somebody else?
Primary care units.
Primary
I know
care.
that's probably the same thing.
Primary social care.
Yeah.
Teams. Look, I can just give you a view of the risk of starting to list. You leave someone out, so there's a risk.
Yeah, I mean, in an earlier iteration of the draft recommendation, I had started listing people, and I had judges, and I had doctors, and so on. But as Paul said, you soon realise you're bound to leave somebody out. So that's why we went for the sectoral approach, and it's key personnel within the education, health, criminal justice, prison, and social care services, which is a fairly wide encompassing spectrum of personnel. But you know, the decision is yours whether you want to try and include specific categories of personnel there.
And we will come back. I'm not dismissing anything yet. Table 5, first had a hand up a while. Apologies, and then we'll go to...
Hi, so just for 4.1, just a description of significant additional funding seems to be a little bit vague. And just to make more specific, we'd like to see the accountability, traceability, and transparency regarding to the additional funding. So we would like to see the different emphasis of allocated funding to different sectors and how they've been worked out.
Okay, and I do know, just because I was asked down for a question, I do know if I go to table 12, I know they had some questions on that area as well, and I will be back. Table 12.
Thanks, Paul. We've 2 questions, really. 4.4, to include the potential of secured and ring-fenced novel funding, which is spend tracked against ring-fenced funding, if that makes sense to you. So in other words, that the government cannot retract the funding that we put into ring-fencing, like they did with the Road Traffic Act in 1962. In 2011, they took the ring-fencing funding for roadworks out of that and put it into general. If we do this here, what's to stop them from regenerating that again, these agencies lose funding? So that's our concern there, that we do believe that the ring fencing should be secured and tracked. And then 4.5, can we include an external financial review board? if possible.
Sorry, apologies, my mistake.
Yeah.
I just got distracted. Could you say that one again?
4.5.
Say again.
4 point. Just say that one again, please.
4.4 or 4.5?
4.5.
4.5. Could we include an external financial review board, something like New Era, that's dealing with civil servants at the minute, to oversee the financial and give guidance to them in relation to that? And finally, reference to the Department of Health under 4.5, does that include the HSC and TUSLA? Or are they separated out? Thank you.
Yeah, it would by nature of it.
Yeah, is TUSLA under children?
Yeah, so we might just reference the bodies. It might be clear just to reference bodies themselves as well. So I'll just come back to you on that one. Okay, I'm trying to be fair to tables 2, first of all, please, and then 6, and then we go. Yeah, won't forget you.
Thank you. Just in relation to family supports and 4.8, I appreciate what Cathal was saying about too much detail, but our table feels very strongly that we would like the following to be included. Kinship carers and children should have the same rights as foster carers and foster children, and these rights must include monetary and legal rights.
Again, we'll come back. Sorry, where did I say next? Okay, 6.
4.3, what's the difference between this and 1.4?
Just 4.3 and 1.4, is that the
And
question?
1.4, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of very similar. We could merge.
4.3, is it? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It does look very similar. I think we could probably merge those if you're in agreement, but we'll come back.
And another one, please, 407, add from the narrative down below, the explanatory narrative, that it be brought up and joined with the heading. It says, provide mandatory trauma-informed training for key personnel, and it says across education, etc. It's a bit bleak as a heading for the question.
Oh. So 4.7, the header on it.
4.7,
The
yeah.
header on it, is it?
Yeah.
Rather than the question itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're both the same, aren't they? It's the explanatory narrative is.
Yeah. The one thing I would just say, don't get too hung up about headers. It's the question itself, because these will obviously be integrated in the report. But look, we'll come back. Sorry, apologies. I'm trying to keep notes here as well. Yeah, table. I have to come back to table. Yeah.
So for section 4.8, the table recommended that it should be bit strongly worded regarding the recognise and value for the role of family members, and it should be added that it should be with adequate resources, financial resources should be added into it.
Okay. Let's go back. Okay, table 5. Have I gone to table 5 yet? No, apologies.
On behalf of the table, 4.9, to add to the header after with complex needs and funded to a level so as to ensure security of personal data.
Did you get that one?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, and funded to a level so as to ensure security of personal data. Oh, sorry, that's actually to go down on the explanatory narrative, to add to the last sentence of the explanatory narrative.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cole.
We will, and again, I just urge people just careful on the explanatory stuff, because there will be time for that. I'll come back to table 12. I'm trying to get some other tables, please. Table 9.
Um, 4.9, continuity of care.
In order to reduce the stigma, can I suggest the methadone can be given in the primary care units and also from GPs, and it would also be more convenient for people in rural areas rather than have large queues outside the methadone clinics as at present. Also, I'd like to see key workers allocated to people who use drugs. This would help them to come off them, and care plans made out between the key worker and the person in housing, training, etc.
And sorry, Chair, can I just, is that in a particular recommendation, or is that?
Yes, it's
Where-
just to do a continuity of care for
Okay, in
people,
that.
leaving prison, getting ready to leave prison.
Okay, under 4.9.
Under 4.9.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Cherry, could you repeat the last part of the care plans suggestion that you made?
Just care plans to be made out between the key worker and the person who is using the drugs, that they would make a plan for the future, and this would include housing and training, etc.
Okay, Cherry, thank you. Just trying to get every table in first, so we'll go back to 12, and I have no on table 14, please.
Re point 4.1, and with reference to accountability, we believe there needs to be specificity with regard to the allocation of funds to evidence-based best practice service delivery models. I know the evaluation of best practice service delivery models is referenced in a later ballot 6.3, but there's no correlation between 6.3 and 4.1 in terms of the allocation of funds based on best practice.
Have it. Table 8, Rebecca.
Thank you, Paul. Just to reiterate what Table 2 said about the kinship financial support payments, I'd like to see the phrase non-means tested in there. That came through quite strongly.
Just remind me again, Rebecca, which?
4.8, Paul.
4.8.
Yeah. Financial supports, a kinship specifically was just edited, but non-means tested was a phrase that came through quite clearly.
And your recommendation is to?
Pardon?
Your recommendation is to put what in there? Sorry, excuse me now.
Non-means tested. So the kinship carers' children should have the same rights as foster carers on a non-means test basis. I'm not sure grammatically the correct way to go about it, but I think it's important to have that phrase in there.
Okay. No, sorry, I just didn't.
Okay, thank you.
First time. Okay. Table 12, and then I go to table 4. Sorry, table 12.
Thank you. Just a couple of minor points. Well, on 4.8, we wondered whether it should include the client or drug users' extended support network and not just family, that there could be other people that would require support, like neighbours or non-directly family members. On 4.4, we were looking for something to go in about multi-annual funding to be included, so that there's certainty for the agencies that are providing support. And you had one, do you want to?
And just a quick one on 4.3, sorry. Just to have the government should allocate a needs-based additional resources, and then at the end just to add irrespective of term length. I know it's in the narrative, but just to put it in the heading, I think is
irrespective
important.
of term length.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm trying to write.
Sorry, I've just lost track of myself here. Would you mind repeating that last point, please, on 4.3?
Needs-based additional resources.
Sure.
Yeah.
So 4.3,
Okay.
yeah, the government should allocate needs-based additional resources, and then at the end of it, at the end of the sentence, so services within this prison system, irrespective of term length.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Jerry, table 4, please, and then.
So this is the group feedback. On 4.1, it's just echoing what other tables have said in terms of significant and additional. I suppose who decides what's significant and additional, and if there can be some external input on that it's demand-led or need-led, rather than government decision of what constitutes significant, that there's some evidence basis for that. And then on 4.2, we'd like to see a standalone recommendation that there's significant in line with demand increase for community-based and residential treatment and recovery services, not just those that are in response to the need for an alternative to custodial services. That there's a specific recommendation around that as well.
No, just so clear, just say to me again, it's a new recommendation. It's not related to any of these ones.
I don't know whether you split 4.2 because that's specifically around prisons, but there's some way to make a specific spelt out recommendation for a significant in line with demand increase in community-based and residential treatment and recovery services. I know 4.1 you'd hope it would be covered in that, but we're saying that to specifically name community-based and residential treatment and recovery services, that there needs to be a significant increase.
No, but if I added in here as a clause within 4.1 and...
As long as it's named, because the lack of bed space in particular was something that came up very strongly again and again in the first 3 weekends,
Yeah,
I think we were all struck by.
Yeah.
And then related to 4.2 as well, a question came up if those recommendations were for people who were up on drug-related charges only, or for people who were up on all charges but who had addiction issues.
It's non-drug related. It's any charge.
Any charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And
yeah, I would have an issue now with it being for any charge, because people are often in prison for the offence that they've committed as opposed to taking drugs. The offence may have resulted from drug use, but I don't think you could not have a consequence for behaviour.
Yes.
That's just residential treatment for. So I think that needs to be rewarded to reflect that in some way.
And I think if we introduce, say, the phrase "where appropriate," because yes, I mean there's, okay.
He's good at that. He's brilliant.
And then just for the rest of the group feedback was then just on 4.4, on line 4, there was additional services should be explored, to replace the word explored with implemented, and that's not getting into the smaller lines. It was just to strengthen the recommendation.
Sorry, this is 4.4.
This is in the explanatory, is it?
Yeah.
To examine.
So 4.4, line 4, additional services should be explored.
Oh, yes.
And we're saying implemented, so to strengthen that recommendation.
Okay.
And then on 4.5, with the transparency, we were a little, great recommendation, great need for extra data. We were just worried about the burden that would place on smaller organizations. And while there is a recommendation to increase the funding, asking smaller organizations to produce that amount of data on an annual basis can be quite a burden. So again, as I was saying earlier, if there can be something that goes in that acknowledges that that work is labor intensive, is time consuming.
I think my intention with drafting this one was that the burden will be placed on the funding agency or the funding department, not on the recipient.
But the funding agency will ask the recipient organisation for that information and that data.
I don't think
and they will ask them to prove the impact analysis.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's something we need to get better at in terms of what outcomes.
It's not a bad thing as long as they're given the person hours to produce that information, and very often at the moment they're not.
I think we were, yes, okay.
I'm just saying fund them to do it.
Yeah. I think the resourcing we've captured that these organisations need to be better resourced. I'd be very reluctant to recommend in that regard, because I think this sector, like many other sectors, needs to get better at measuring outcomes.
They do, but they need to be resourced to do that, and not to be expected to absorb it.
I think we've captured resourcing separately.
I don't think you have, because this type of work is
being the person who's been expected to do that.
Yeah, look,
it's
we can
seen
make a
as
reference to
invisible.
the resourcing supports to produce the data. Yeah?
Pardon?
We can make a reference to the required resourcing supports to produce the data.
Yeah, as long as it's just, again, an acknowledgement that
Yeah.
these things don't just happen.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Okay, I'm going to test the floor on this. Ken. Or Zin.
Sorry, just one question regarding 4.9, and this mentioned to continuity of care and join up all care of our service user, including people and the complex needs, and it mentioned about integrated care plan that consists of the person-centered, and does it mean that all services that we have that focus on the wider social, like different communities and groups, and those providers are not going to be joined and they still run independently?
Is this related to 4.9?
Yes.
In the narrative, is it?
Yes, 4.9 in the regarding the continuity of the care. So when we say joined up care for all service users, and we are not joining up the service providers, right?
Yeah, okay, sorry. The reference is joined up care for all the service users. By implication would mean joined up care across the... You see a reference. You see a need to put a reference to the joined up providers of the care.
Yeah, and it doesn't like in this term, right? Like so in 4.9, that we do not plan on joining or reintegrating of the existing providers, and we do not have any say. About
I think.
Sorry for no. We do not have any items for joining or reintegrating all the existing charities and services.
Okay, so your point is greater integration across the service providers?
Yeah,
okay.
And all the service providers are still running independently and as a status quo. Am I correct?
Yeah, and we're looking, and your recommendations, better integration across the service providers for the benefit of the service user.
Yeah, and just for
Okay.
clarification, this is not a part of 4.9, is it?
It's 4.9, you've referenced it under, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, is in for me, the answer lies in this phrase, optimize services, which doesn't say services should be amalgamated or services shouldn't be, but it says optimize them in whatever way best achieves the outcome of continuity of care for users. So it's probably covered in that phrase, optimize services.
Okay, I'm going to test the floor on a range of issues here now. So, apologies, table one.
I'm very sorry to disappoint you all. All your deliberations and all your thinking and the whole summer we've spent coming to meetings here all fall flat on their face without money. We need money. We need a lot of money. As Rebecca said a couple of months ago, didn't you, Rebecca? She said, no more motorways. Now, I know the people of Limerick will probably kill me for saying this, but this whole business of drugs is going to be put straight. Okay, we won't organise it all, but at least we can alleviate a lot of the misery, particularly the very poor people. The very poor people are suffering far the most from drugs than any of us. But we need to have a long-term government acceptance, and maybe from all the political parties to get together, for about 7 years, 8 years, to have a set amount of money provided so that each charity will have somebody available, that when somebody who's on drugs wants to come off drugs, they can arrive at the charity and they'll be dealt with then. Not 6 months later when they're dead, but then. And so we need to have a long-term funding, and it's got to be a large amount of money, and it's got to be for a long time. It's got on a set basis, and there's no running away from that, because everything we've seen, everything we've done, all ends up with that whole problem, funding. You've got to provide the funding.
Thank you. And I think there is a reference, sorry, I don't think any of us would disagree, there is a reference, a strengthened reference around multi-annual funding secured, you know, so in strategy. Yeah, let's make sure we have it in. Okay, I'm going to test the floor on a range of issues that
I'll be really brief, I promise. I did think that there's no mention of mental health services and funding our mental health services to help address trauma early and to prevent harmful drug use. So does anybody think that that needs to be a recommendation?
I do think it comes later in...
Is the issue dual diagnosis?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come at it then and see if it's not enough. Is that okay? Okay, I'm going to go to the floor this time for definite. So I'm going to list off and just test the floor, and then we'll finalise the ballot paper. So the first one was...
Do you want to go from the screen down? Would that work? Or would you prefer go through your own notes?
Yeah, go ahead. I have them in order. You have them.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you might be
Scroll down
quicker.
to the top.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No,
No, go ahead. We'll let Carl walk through each of them and just make sure you're happy. Go ahead.
So, first of all, proposing to include the word, or to emphasise that the statutory sector is already included in this allocation of significant funding. I know somebody said that the HSE, was it Abigail, suggested that there needs to be an explicit call out. It's already in there in that language of statutory service providers. So I don't know if that's sufficient, Abigail.
I think it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
So can I just go back to where we test each one?
Yeah.
So on the first one we said there was missing something was missing around accessibility of stakeholders, specific reference to services. Are we happy we've captured that one?
Which recommendation?
I think it came from...
Is it?
Let me come back to that one.
Okay.
4.7, there was a reference to, that we should make a reference to GPs, etc. Our view from the top table was we'd be reluctant to recommend you to do that because you start to leave out some other groups. Are you happy that we would just leave it as it is? Contest the floor. Everybody happy that we would leave it as it is, or would you rather specify grades?
That's
Okay.
Leave as is.
So leave as is. That's fine. 4.1, there was a reference to additional funding. There's a few 4.1s actually. So we go to 4.1 maybe. And how it's allocated. 4.1, if we put it 4.1.
Have it in there.
So is everybody happy with, as we took them in real time, what was coming up? Everybody happy with that? That would go to a ballot. Put your hand, please, if you can. Yeah.
I'm just going to need to edit it and turn it into a legible sentence, but we're going to include reference to accountability, transparency and evidence-based best practice and needs-based allocation of funding.
Okay. 4.4, there was the whole issue of 4.4 came up a bit, but secured and ring-fenced funding that's tracked and traced. I think there was a strong reference that we would, secured and ring-fenced funding that is tracked, I think is probably still missing, is it? That is tracked, isn't that correct?
There's a lovely civil service phrase called hypothecation, but I don't think we'll use it.
I think we go for tracked. That's why we work well together. He's the right answers most of the time. Okay, we go for tracked. We're coming back to 4.2, haven't... I'm just raising them as they were raised. I'm coming back to 4.2. Yeah, we're just going through as they were raised from the floor. Yeah. So 4.5, there was reference to having an external review board to oversee and give guidance, reference to the Department of Health, and there was a reference that we should reference to specific bodies, for example, the HSE or TUSLA. So 4.5, we captured any of that?
I would suggest probably the review board would be the comptroller and auditor general would review that report. That would be the best placed body to do that. They've got the expertise and the kind of ability to do that.
And that would go to the PAC by nature of it. Everybody okay with that one? Sorry, just meant to check. You all okay? Hands up. Okay, thank you. 4.8 is reference to kinship centres, I think it was. Carers, kinship carers. monetary and legal rights, reference now 4.8.
Yeah, there was a combination of different things there in 4.8, but all aiming for the same thing, which is to give enhanced rights and supports to kinship carers on the same basis as foster carers and foster children, including legal and monetary rights on a non-means tested basis.
All agreed? Thank you. 4.3 was a reference that it's very aligned with 1.4 and we should probably merge them and strengthen them. Everybody okay with that? I just looked at them. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
4.7 was a reference, I think it was more a reference to the header of the question itself, but I'm just not going to put that a vote. I don't think it's something we can tidy up.
Actually, I think what the suggestion was, we bring the explanatory narrative text in as the recommendation. So something like a minimum mandatory basic training should be implemented for personnel across the various sectors.
So can I just check, if everybody can just check the room, is everybody happy as Cathal as 4.7 worded here now to go to a ballot? You're not balloting on it, you're just balloting that it's ready to go to a ballot. 4.7? Everybody okay? Go ahead. 4.8, there was reference to recognising and valuing the role played by family and also a reference later to additional financial resourcing to support them. 4.8.
So I think we've already agreed to this part of it, and it's and I think that probably relates to it. And then there was just a reference to extended support network.
Are we okay for that to go to ballot? Thank you. 4.9. There was reference to additional wording available methadone in primary care centres and GPs. 4.9. Are we back? Just need to get through this. 4.9. Is everybody okay? Do we put that to a ballot? Everybody agreed?
It's not, for me now, it's proving, it's looking a bit challenging in terms of a coherent recommendation. What you could do is you could bring these points down into the explanatory narrative, which doesn't overcomplicate the recommendation.
Yeah, Jesse and Jack, have you a question related to this one? Or is it something else yet? So I'll come to you now, Jesse. Jack Ford.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one small change where it says including people with complex needs, if there's just with complex and or specific needs.
Okay, Jesse. Let's pass the mic.
Thank you. It was just that we've actually had a speaker in previously who said that GPs are already able to prescribe methadone, but they choose not to because they don't want methadone users in their surgeries. So if we put this as a recommendation, the government will say, well, sure, we're already allowing this to happen, even though the GPs themselves are choosing not to. They get a flat payment of €200 per methadone user that signs up, but they don't want them in their waiting rooms or sitting in their car parks while they've got other people in there. So I think we're just duplicating something that's already happening.
Okay. Sorry, just on 4.2, yeah?
Actually, it's a more general point. I was just going to suggest that we change the references to the government, to the state, in that the state and the government are different things, and I think it would be more comprehensive if we refer to the state rather than the government. Across all the recommendations. I know that's a bit late in the day to be saying that, but it just struck me there that we're talking about the government, whereas if we refer to the state, we're referring to state agencies, HSE, etc., and it's more comprehensive.
I'm going to ask the civil servant to comment on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you in certain areas. There may be specific recommendations where it is a recommendation targeted at the government as distinct from the state. So, for example, the establishment of a cabinet committee, it's the government that would decide that rather than the state. So there will be specific things that are directly the responsibility of the government, and others then that are... Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, and let us look through others and just see is there a distinction we can make. Okay. So
Sorry, Paul, just to clarify that for that gentleman. the state don't make policy and regulation, the government do, and that's why we need to target that government, right? The state is us. We're all part of the state. The government are the body charged with implementing and putting legislation in place, okay?
Okay, look, we've taken on board. Okay, what did I swear we now? 4.1.
Sorry, I don't think we've kind of resolved 4.9 on methadone and.
Oh, sorry, I
GPs
didn't
and-
put to
yeah.
I didn't put it to the floor. As it's worded, and Jessie had her concern about, you know, it's already in existence. Sorry, Jerry? We could put something in the explanatory, was it? Yeah. Yeah, we can reference something that Jessie has said, currently available, not taken up, not utilised, not, yeah. Okay, so we'll reference something in the explanatory. Is the floor happy that we will put that, with that clarification? Okay, thank you. 4.1, there was a reference to best practice service delivery models. Did I capture that one right? 4.1 again?
Yeah, I think we've covered that.
Okay, we did. So, okay, now 4.8, non-means test basis, a reference to including a non-means test basis, and include client.
Yeah, I
and
think we've
users.
covered that as well.
We have it well. Okay, is everybody happy 4.8 as it's referenced to go to the vote? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. 4.4, reference to multi-annual funding. Again, I think it was. Okay, I think we have that. Yeah, we have it? Maybe glasses.
It wasn't 4.4, was it? Though?
Sorry, I must have got the wrong reference now. But there was a reference to multi-annual funding for the strategy, wasn't that the point?
It probably goes best into 4.1, and we have it there in the explanatory narrative, multi-annual basis, but we could bring it up into the text of the recommendation itself.
Okay, so on the basis that we bring it up, everybody okay? Yes, votes yes, thank you. 4.3, needs-based additional resources irrespective of term length.
In the interest of us getting
Sorry,
out,
Ilana, could just...
just in the interest of us getting out of here anyway, time tonight, could we go through 4.1, do all the changes? Go to 4.2, do all the changes.
Yeah,
Would
we
that
were-
not be easier?
Many things will be easier in this process, plus me on that one. And I need you to work with me as well.
I think we're very nearly there, though, with this ballot paper. There's only one or two little bits left.
Yeah, okay. 4.1, I think we have covered. 4.2, which one wasn't the issue of standalone in line with demand, community and treatment-based services. So 4.2, I don't know, we went back to the Is everybody happy with 4.2?
Yeah.
Okay. 4.4 we did. 4.5 required support. 4.9 reference to joined up providers of services. I think we have 4.9.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Going back to Abigail's suggestion. Abigail, could you help us solve this conundrum?
Yeah.
If,
Hi, yes, sure.
Sorry, folks, just get your attention.
So I suppose just my recommendation, or what our table is kind of talking about, is it's the wording of it. So when we talk about, where is it now? I got lost.
So,
yeah, funding should be sufficient to address known service gaps that currently exist, and also to be allocated based on either population density or things like that. My concern there is, again, the way it is right now, you know, there are certain areas that will be sparse in population, but will be large in terms of the landmass, and then services are missing there. So I'm particular about making sure that there is service available within every county that's accessible to every person.
Yeah, sorry, Abigail, I didn't do justice to your point. It was about the accessibility of statutory services,
Yes,
specifically
statutory
HSE
services. Yeah.
across, yeah.
Yeah,
I think we
it's
can
great to have the voluntary services, but
Yeah.
I think we do need to have statutory services. Everyone should have access to it.
No,
wherever
I
they are.
didn't do justice to your point.
and
That's
Abigail, is it something that we can work into the explanatory narrative a little bit more, because it would really lengthen the length of the recommendation itself?
Okay, now your preference is referenced in the
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it needs to be
Will
in
do.
the reference. It's not just an explanation.
We'll do that.
It's the right to everyone to have that service
Okay.
available to them wherever they are.
We will do that. On that basis, everybody happy that when we strengthen that to that base, we put that in the... Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. I think I have covered them all. I haven't, someone's going to tell me. So on that basis, we're going to revise ballot paper number 4. I'm going to ask everybody to distribute ballot paper number 3 now, and we're going to take the ballot on number 3. And then... Sorry?
Oh yeah, we just need to get the boxes set up. Oh, we've the results number 1.
Yeah, sorry, we're going to get the ballot boxes inside. I'm going to give you the results of ballot number 1. Do we have them, yeah? Okay, can we get the ballot boxes, though? Yeah. Do you want to go? Here again? Whatever works.
Yeah, you can actually run it from up there.
Just get a roaming mic, please, to Julia. Let's get.
Hi, I just have a question which is related to earlier voting. So, you know, when we had the stage 1 and stage 2 votes, they were first passed by the person who had the most votes won, yeah? But why did that change when this went from the voting on the breakdown of the different drugs that resulted in a comprehensive health-led approach? If we stayed in the same process as the first 2 votes, legalization, would have been a clear winner that the most number 1 votes. There was 29 votes difference if there would be the same approach like when was the first one and the second one. There's 29 votes difference like with the people who actually were wanted for legalization and regularization.
I think
29 plus.
Yeah, I think Kieran did clarify. I'm going to ask him again. He did clarify before we went into the ballot why we were using a single transferable vote for a complex vote across a range of issues. I'll ask Kieran to explain it again, but he did clarify it before we went into the vote.
Yeah, there's a variety of different ways of counting votes where you've got a lot of people voting on a lot of different options or a number of options other than just yes, no. And the one that is recognised as the valid one, the preferred one for use in the state here is single transferable vote. What it means is that everybody gets their vote, and as long as you fill in your preferences, if you don't get your first preference, your vote will transfer, which is why it's single transferable vote, it will transfer to your second preference. Your vote only ever counts once in one pile of votes. At the end, your vote will sit in one of the piles as they're counted. And at any stage, if any one option gets sufficient votes to mean that it can't be caught by all the rest combined, that particular one is considered to be the winner. In other words, it has exceeded the quota. In the case of particularly the vote on cannabis today, and the second one I think was the DMT, was it? Those two, neither of them was a clear winner right up to the end. The very last step, if we take the one on cannabis, we ended up with 2 particular options. One had 29 votes, one had 28, so it was very close. The next step in an election is you eliminate the bottom one. But if you've only 2 left and you eliminate the lowest, you've only 1 left anyway. So the one that remains is the consensus. That's the way that system works. It's the way we elect our president. It's the way we elect our TDs, our European Parliament members.
Okay.
So,
apologies. I'm going to move forward with 2 things.
I think that was actually explained very clearly.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to ask for the declaration of ballot paper number 1. I think you're nearly ready to go, Kieran. And for a distribution of the ballot papers for number 3 that we've already gone through. Sorry, my view is Kieran has explained it, started the process, and in great detail at the end of the ballot as well in terms of how it works. And that's my view. Sorry, is the whole in agreement with me that Kieran, as chair, explained it at the start of the process, during the process, and after the process? Okay.
There were people who were voting putting an X in the ballot. So for people who were voting
demonstrates that it actually wasn't a very clear process. Now, I understood the process personally because I'm familiar with that type of voting, but there was an awful lot of confusion. There was, 12, 15, 18 people who said they weren't even familiar enough with the options. But we went with majority rule and we started the voting process. Now, I was familiar enough and I put my hand up that I was willing to go ahead, but I was very uncomfortable that we went ahead and voted when there were enough people who raised their hand to say they weren't even familiar enough with the process to go ahead. And personally, I think we should have spent 20 more minutes making sure that everybody in the room were familiar enough with the process.
Just for clarity, the voting process is what we all vote on at election time.
Well, look, irrespective of whether the outcome was something I agreed with or not, I don't think the process actually was clear. And I don't think you can say that the process was clear.
Could I say, Kerry, the instructions on the ballot paper were crystal clear and very uncomplicated, right? And a single transferable vote process, which, as we said, was explained in great detail before the voting, and the results explaining in enormous detail, infinite detail, after the voting, I think was all crystal clear. There is always going to be people who do not necessarily follow the given instructions. I think that's a standard experience across every electorate. And those votes were not discounted, they were counted. And if you want Kieran to explain how those votes were counted, then I'm sure he can.
No, I think if everybody in the room was happy with the voting process, you wouldn't get the atmosphere that's in the room.
Okay, Kieran, do you want to just?
Well, just on that one, if you voted with an X counts as a first preference. It's a valid preference. We did get a few votes that just had an X, and I think we got one or possibly two that had an X and then a 2 and a 3. And in those cases, they count. They count at national elections, they count here as well. As long as you express a preference that's clear. We had people that voted A, B, C, D. That counts as a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's clear what the voter's preference is. The ballot paper does explain at the top that you are to put a number 1 beside your first preference and number 2 beside your second. And if you do that and you follow down through it, your vote literally follows it moves from one pile to the other. If you only expressed a single preference, then if your preference wasn't the one that actually ended up as the winner, then your vote ends at that preference. But as long as you continued and followed the steps, it counts.
Could I just add that the single transferable vote mechanism that we've used for ballot paper 2 is one that has been used in previous citizens' assemblies when there has been a complex issue to be debated, and Kieran has been involved, for example, in the Citizens' Assembly on the 8th Amendment, the referendum, and that used a single transferable vote process as well.
I think you described it as multiple options, Kieran. I think you described it as multiple options or multiple choices. Okay. I really want to move us to somebody who said we'll be here till all hours. We have moved to this process. I do want to distribute the ballot papers number 3. I think they have been distributed. Yeah, and we have the results ready for number 1. So Kieran, can I call you to the podium, please, for number 1, please?
Yeah,
do you want to go here, Caesar?
We can put them up there. We've the 4 sub-questions for number 1. I'll just go through. We have individual sheets that we can project later. We should have one combined one available now. I'll call you out the figures anyway.
Okay, we'll ask Kieran to call them out and then we'll put them up on the screen.
Now we got them, have we? All 4 of these were very clear cut. There's no.
Okay, so can we just please just tune in? I just give you the.
Okay, I'll read through them. Question 1.1 was the next national drug strategy should prioritise a systemic approach to recovery. There was 86 votes cast, 2 of them were invalid, 80 voters agreed, 2 disagreed and 2 don't know. So significant agree for that one, and as you'll see on the screen for all of them. For 1.2, which was introduce a health in all policies approach to policy development, there was, of the 86, less the 2 spoiled votes, there was 78 agreed, 2 disagree and 4 don't know. On 1.3, the state should formalise, adopt and resource alternative health-focused options for people with a drug addiction within the criminal justice system. There were, again, three spoiled votes on this one. 77 agree, 3 disagree, 3 don't know. And on 1.4, the Department of Justice and the Irish Prison Service should develop and fund enhanced prison-based addiction treatment services. 86 votes cast, 2 invalid, 79 agree, 2 disagree, 3 don't know. So in all 4 cases, the agree option is the preferred by a significant majority of the Assembly.
Okay, so I think fairly clear results, which will be part of our recommendations. You should have ballot paper number 3. And you're going to ask Jesse and Marcus. Don't vote just yet. We just want Jesse and Marcus to come up to us if we can and validate and seal the boxes. Have we got some seals, Ryan, or whatever?
Jerome,
We've got
we
some
get
seals.
seals for the ballot boxes. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead. We have them. So we're just going to seal the boxes for you. Cast your vote for ballot paper number 3, which is looks like a kind of brown orange paper, is it? We're just going to...
Just looking at it, yeah, okay. Maybe the best thing we'll do is we'll come up with a separate ballot question. Let
Okay.
everybody fill in everything else.
Yeah.
We'll introduce a new ballot paper for
Yeah.
that specific missing one.
Sorry, everybody. 3.6, you'll see, which Averick and a few others have highlighted, was 3.6. You'll see it doesn't have a voting option on it. It's an error mistake. Can you complete the ballot paper with all the rest? And we'll give you a separate ballot paper on 3.6, just for clarity. Thank you.
$5.30.
5:30. We'll check now where you're all at. What do you think? No.
I know that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, indeed.
No.
Yes, yeah, just the logo, yeah.
So we're going to forward. Okay, could I encourage anybody who hasn't voted yet on number 3 to please bring their brown ballot paper forward, please?
Feedback from the back of the room from our ASG that it might be worth considering finishing off what we're doing at the moment and giving it the night to come back in the morning to finish the rest of it.
I know you're going to finish at 5:30.
Yeah?
Okay.
Well, I'm just passing on the message from the back of the room. The sense that the vibe they're getting from the back of the room is that it's
What time would you
starting to
finish
feel a
at?
bit- Well, like, finish
Between
wherever we
5
are
and
at 5:30 or get everything done by 5:30.
No, we won't get everything.
We won't get
Oh, yeah,
everything.
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
grand.
yeah, yeah. I know we're going to 5:30, which we planned.
Yeah, and then we're done.
I think closing early.
Tidy up in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, can I just check everybody who wants or has a ballot and wants to express a ballot for ballot number 3 has done so? Just about to close the ballot, so we'll take it as closed. Thank you, and we'll ask our 2 observers to bring it through a Kieran for counting. Ballot paper 3. Ballot paper 4. So what are we're on 5, is it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, can I just do a test with the room in terms of it's getting warm, people are tired. We have planned to go till 5:30. Is everybody okay that we will continue to work 5:30 and we close at 5:30? Is that okay? We won't go any further. Quick show of hands, yeah? We're all okay. Okay, so we'll proceed we'll proceed. Yeah. Okay, ballot paper number 5, if I can, we'll just, sorry, Carl, you're not ready, are you? You okay now? Take your time. We will be just looking at ballot paper number 5. Take your time. Do you want this hard copy? I'll just ask Carl to do a quick intro, walk through it, please.
Would you press number 3 there down at the blocks? The middle one there. It mightn't work, but that's right. So, ballot paper 5 is again one of those ballot papers where we've amalgamated several different topics. So we have it now called supply reduction, reducing supply, prevention, protecting young people, and communities and harm reduction. So it's an omnibus ballot paper. There's a lot of different topics included in there. It has 9 different questions, starting with reducing the sale and supply and distribution of illicit drugs, alternative pathways for young people, building resilient, sustainable communities, tackling drug-related intimidation and violence, prioritising harm reduction, strategic approach to prevention, building resilience and prevention capital, as well as comprehensive school-based drug prevention, and a national public health communication strategy, which will do several things, including preventative options, but also reducing the shaming and stigmatisation of people who use drugs. So there's a lot squeezed in there. Hopefully it's in the right ballpark, but very grateful for your feedback. Thanks.
Okay, so 10 to 5, if we give it 5:05 or so, just to walk through the tables, and then we'll try again walk through proposed changes in a live format, and we will finish at 5:30. Okay, thank you. Table number 5 is missing all their people. They've all gone. Caesar, yeah. Kieran. If we can get your attention, please. We're just going to produce the results of ballot paper number 3, please.
Okay, ballot paper number 3 had a total of 10 sections, but we've left out number 36, which we'll vote on separately. It was just excluded from the paper or misprint. So I'll go through the other 9. Question 1 was the state should take urgent, decisive, ambitious action to improve its response. My titles aren't necessarily the latest amendments, but that's the gist of it. Of that, we had 86 people voted in each of these. 81 voted in favour. They agree with the option 3.1. 3 disagreed, no don't knows, and 2 spoiled votes. For question 3.2, drug misuse as a policy priority, we had 83 agree, 2 disagree, 0 don't know, 1 invalid vote. Number 3.3, the whole of government policy coherence, operational cohesion and effective leadership. It was 79 in agreement, 5 disagree, 0 don't know, and 2 invalid. 3.4 was the new iteration of the National Drug Strategy to be produced as a matter of urgency. There was 83 in favour, 1 disagree, 1 don't know, 1 invalid. 3.5, greater political priority and prominence to drugs policy and related issues. 82 in favour, 1 disagree, 2 don't know, and 1 invalid. 3.6 we'll come back to as a separate ballot. 3.7, prioritise vulnerable marginalised groups. 77 in favour, 4 disagree, 2 don't know, 3 invalid. 3.8, drugs policy design and implementation should be informed by service users and people who use drugs. 74 in favour, 7 disagree, 3 don't know, 2 invalid. 3.9, government should work with key stakeholders to build an effective whole of society response to drugs issues. 73 in favour, 7 disagree, 3 don't know, and 3 invalid. And the final one, which I don't think I have on mine, 3.10, was 77 in favour, 5 disagree, 1 don't know, and 3 invalid. We'll publish those on a slide shortly when we get them into the system. But again, like paper 1, all of the 9 options that we counted were overwhelmingly agree by a significant margin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Thanks, members, as well. So we're now distributing, if we can get through this process to the last piece, to bear with us, we're distributing ballot papers number 4. We do, just remember, we have to come back to you on 3.6 on a special ballot paper. I'm proposing we'll take this ballot paper and we'll secure the ballot boxes overnight and we'll count them in the morning. So, but that should bring us to a conclusion for today. So again, if you can just go through the ballot paper, and I'd ask Jesse and Marcus just to validate the ballot boxes when you're ready.
Twins come together.
Yeah.
No, I'll fix it.
Thanks again. Thanks again. You're spot on. So the ballot box is obviously open. Okay, apologies.
Folks, just to clarify, I've realised that we haven't fixed the word next. It still refers in the ballot paper to the next national drug strategy. So rest assured that will disappear in the recommendation. So it's that'll be fixed. Thank you.
Okay, can I just check if everybody has, or can I ask everybody please to finalise your vote, please, for ballot paper number 4. Hey, if everybody has declared a vote, just checking. We, oh, well done. Hold on, there's one more, two more. All right. So if everybody, just one last check, let's conclude our vote. Ballot papers are there, and we'll ask Kieran and Jesse just to secure the ballot papers. We won't do the count until tomorrow. One sec. One last check. Anybody? One last chance. One more last chance. Okay, we'll ask the team to bring the ballot papers away. On that basis, with your agreement, I'll formally close this evening's session. We will be back tomorrow. I want to thank you for an amazing, diligent day. Your inputs, it's been a slog on some points. It's been difficult on others, but you've worked yourself well through it, and I want to thank you all for that. I'm going to formally close sorry, just in terms of our regroup tomorrow, good point. It's been a tiring day for everybody. People have commitments tomorrow as well. Is the preference for 9 or 9:30 start? Sorry, can we just a show of hands who prefer to start at 9:30? Okay, 9:30 it is. 9:30 on Monday. So look, can we formally close the webcam now, please? Thanks very much. So look, thanks again for your engagement throughout today. I think, sorry, it's going to be a difficult process. Some parts are going to be more challenging than others, and that's what you exactly experienced today. But thanks again for everybody working through it. I'm going to pass the call for you, if you'll